Time for the Power to Connect with Angela Ray.
My parents came because they knew my brother and I needed a better life. So we couldn't be like a family together because, of basically I was getting sick in Mexico City and so was my brother because the pollution was really, really bad back then. People were just basically, careless in how Mexico City was being run. And then my parents were like, okay, well, let's send you over to be raised by your grandparents. And they're like, this is a bad idea. When I go see my daughter and son, they don't even think I'm their parent. They call me aunt and uncle. It was crazy. Apparently, when I came to the U.S., in the plane, I was crying and saying that my mother was not my mother, that my mother was in Mexico and her name, calling out her name. And so even immigration pulled us aside because they were like thinking it was a kidnapping, right?
Wow.
And so my grandma got on the phone. She's like, no, that is your mother. You need to chill. I am just your grandmother and, you got to trust, like, I'm not lying to you.
How old were you?
I was about 6.5 years old. So
how long did you live with your grandmother for you to feel like
I lived with her since I was 1 year old. So until I was like 6.5, whenever we moved. So like, I really saw her as a mother. And even like to this day, when I talk about my grandma, I call her Mama Nachita. To me, she'll always be a mom. And I'm blessed to have basically three moms because one of my aunts also raised me. So, but yeah, it's that, I guess, I just realized the sacrifice that they made, right? They left their profession. They were professors in Mexico. My mom, here's a funny story. She hadn't cooked like until she came to the US because she always had people working for her, right? Like she had folks that would clean the house, folks that would take care of, the cooking and the cleaning. And it was a wake up call for her. She's like, now I have to do this my own, right? Because, I want my family together. So it was interesting because I did kind of even though I didn't really spend a lot of time with them in Mexico, I do remember some holidays where it was like, I felt like the lifestyle from Mexico to the US was completely different, right? I noticed by the way that my mom, the way she would handle a lot of the house stuff. And even we didn't live in a house. We lived in an apartment in the US. So that was like new to me because I never grew up in an apartment. And, so it's interesting, like all these changes that happened. And as I grew older, I realized, wow, they made all these sacrifices so we could be a unit, and
I want to point out something. Look at all of the powerful women who impacted you. Grandmother, abuelita, your tia,
exactly,
mama.
Yes.
And this is why you are this amazing.
Aww.
Yeah, I had an amazing mother like that. No, seriously, you know what I mean? And that's what it takes to raise women like us, we're doers.
Exactly.
That's crazy. I didn't know this about you.
Yeah. And my mom would multitask, right? So I feel like that's another thing that women we're good at is multitasking. Like we're dealing with the kids and we're dealing with the house and we're dealing with, some of us going to work at the same time, and then, sometimes the husband needs attention too, right? So it's
absolutely
a lot of like, I've told my mom this, like you are the CEO of the house, really. Like you were the reason why we had stability, and so I'm forever grateful for my mama.
Let me ask you this. So you were like 6.5 on the plane, giving them the blues, singing "It's Not My Mom." When did you sort of change and coalesce? This is mom. This is dad.
Yeah. So it took me a year, to be honest. It took me a whole year. And the reason being was because I was in denial for the longest time. And I kept wanting to go back to Mexico. And I think, I don't know where I flipped the switch, but I know it must have happened in a year, because all of a sudden I was like, okay with giving hugs. Because, I just felt like I always saw her as an aunt when I was young. So when I realized, okay, well, I kind of look like her, and little things that would be like, oh, I guess I have that similar, taste, and like, we both like this, or, so yeah, it was really interesting. My brother, he actually did not struggle as much as I did. I think it was because he spent more time with my mom and dad in Mexico City.
He's older than you? He's older? He's
younger than me.
Okay.
So we're just a year apart. But he always had the stronger immune system. And so, he was able to spend more time with them. But yeah, I think it was interesting to see that, that just like how he quickly adapted versus myself. And I probably, just the way I saw the relationship with my parents and my brother, also like made me realize, okay, there's something there that, they're not like, they didn't kidnap me. Right.
Right.
So yeah.
You know what we're talking about here? We're talking about the power to connect.
Exactly.
That's what this podcast is all
about. I love that.
This child was struggling to connect with the woman who birthed her, but through the power of the Almighty, and the power of love, and the power of the connection between a mother and a daughter, it wasn't going to last. Y'all were going to be together. And I love that
Yes.
someone told me they laugh the same. I'm like, then I'm in love with Mom, because you're laughing, we laugh.
Don't forget to subscribe to The Power to Connect with Angela Ray and follow her on Facebook. You can also stay connected on Twitter and Instagram at angelaray.com.